When we think back to childhood, many of us remember friendships that shaped who we are today. These are the bonds that grew quietly over the years through games, laughter, shared secrets, and even the small quarrels that made reconciliation feel so much sweeter. Some of those friendships remain simply as fond memories, while others evolve into something deeper, something that changes the way we see life and love. This is the story of Nanami, Haruto, and Yuki, three childhood friends whose connection was so strong that it followed them through every stage of growing up. Their journey is not just about romance. It is about loyalty, understanding, and the choices we make when faced with emotions too big to ignore. It is about how love, in its purest form, can grow naturally out of friendship, and how time itself can bring healing, clarity, and second chances. From the very beginning, Nanami's life was brightened by the presence of Haruto and Yuki. The three of them grew up in the same quiet town, surrounded by familiar streets, local festivals, and the comforting rhythm of everyday life. Haruto, with his natural talent and determination, often stood out. Whether it was in schoolwork, sports, or even small tasks, he seemed to excel without much effort. For Nanami, this brilliance was not intimidating, it was inspiring. She admired him deeply, and as the years went by, admiration blossomed into quiet affection. Yuki, on the other hand, was different. He was not the type to stand in the spotlight, but his presence was steady, warm, and kind. He was the one who always noticed when Nanami seemed tired, the one who carried extra notebooks in case someone forgot theirs, the one who laughed the loudest when a joke was shared. His reliability made him an inseparable part of their trio, even though his feelings were not always visible on the surface. As childhood turned into adolescence, Nanami began to notice the changes within herself. Her world was no longer defined only by school or hobbies. She started to think more about her emotions, about the meaning of companionship, and about the possibility of love. And every time she asked herself where her heart truly leaned, the answer remained Haruto. She tried to hide it, but emotions have a way of making themselves known. Her admiration grew into a quiet longing. Eventually, she found the courage to tell Haruto how she felt. But Haruto, though kind and gentle, was not ready. Each time Nanami expressed her feelings, he carefully, respectfully turned her down. It was never cruel, never careless, but his refusals carried weight all the same. For Nanami, these moments were difficult, but she also understood. Love cannot be forced, and honesty, even when painful, is an act of respect. Unbeknownst to Nanami, Yuki had been observing all of this. He noticed the way Haruto responded, the way Nanami tried to hold back her disappointment, the way their once carefree moments together sometimes carried an invisible heaviness. Inside Yuki grew a quiet determination, a wish to see Nanami happy, a wish to protect her from hurt. His feelings, which had been hidden for years, began to take form. This was the turning point. Yuki realized he could no longer stay silent. His heart wanted to speak, to let Nanami know that she was cherished not only by Haruto, but also by him. And though he knew it might change their friendship forever, he believed honesty was better than silence. After all, true friendship is built on trust, and true affection requires courage. It was a delicate moment. Nanami valued Yuki deeply, and his honesty touched her heart. Yet she also knew that love could not be given out of obligation. She had to stay true to her feelings, even if it meant gently declining Yuki's confession. Her response was respectful, thoughtful, and kind, but even so, things were never quite the same afterward. Friendships, especially ones formed in childhood, are not immune to the complexities of growing emotions. When love enters the equation, relationships change. And sometimes, the very closeness that once brought comfort can create distance. That was what happened between Nanami, Haruto, and Yuki. What had once been effortless now became filled with unspoken words and quiet hesitations. And so, their paths began to drift apart. Life carried each of them forward, shaping them in different ways, until years later, fate brought them together once again. Time has a way of reshaping the bonds we once thought would last forever. For Nanami, Haruto, and Yuki, the light-hearted ease of childhood gradually gave way to the more complicated emotions of growing up. Their trio, once inseparable, began to change after Yuki's heartfelt confession and Nanami's gentle refusal. It was no one's fault, yet the atmosphere shifted. The laughter they once shared without hesitation now carried pauses. The simple joy of spending time together became tinged with caution, as though each of them was unsure how to move forward without hurting the others. Nanami, though grateful for Yuki's honesty, felt a quiet sadness. She respected him deeply, and she treasured their friendship, but she could not change what her heart told her. She had admired Haruto for so long that her feelings for him had become part of her identity. Rejecting Yuki was painful, not because she doubted herself, but because she feared losing the bond they had built together. Yuki, for his part, tried to move on. He wanted to believe that his confession would not change anything, but reality was harder than expectation. Every time he saw Nanami and Haruto together, even in the simplest of conversations, he felt a small ache inside. It was not jealousy in the destructive sense. It was more like longing, mixed with the understanding that some things are simply not meant to be. Yuki carried himself with grace, but the quiet distance between them grew, creating a space where once there had been closeness. And Haruto, what of him? To Nanami, he had always seemed untouchable, focused, and self-assured. Yet even Haruto felt the shift. He noticed Yuki's silence more often, Nanami's hesitation when she laughed, and the absence of the effortless harmony they once enjoyed. Still, he remained silent, unsure of what words could bridge the growing gap. Life, as it always does, moved forward. The trio went their separate ways, new schools, new routines, new circles of friends. Letters and occasional messages replaced daily conversations. As the years passed, memories of their time together softened, like photographs fading at the edges. But while distance created silence, it also created growth. Nanami matured into a young woman with resilience and grace. She carried with her the lessons of honesty, kindness, and respect. Yuki developed strength of character, learning that unrequited love did not define his worth. And Haruto, though often focused on his studies and ambitions, began to reflect on what he had left behind. It was during one of his visits home, years later, that Haruto truly felt the weight of those memories. The town had not changed much, the same streets, lined with familiar trees, the same sound of cicadas in the summer air, the same shops where he, Nanami, and Yuki once shared simple joys. Walking those streets, he could almost hear their laughter echoing in the distance. And in that moment, something stirred inside him. He realized that Nanami's presence in his life had been more than admiration directed at him. It had been constant, steady, and sincere. Her feelings, expressed so openly in the past, had not been fleeting. They had been a reflection of her genuine heart. Haruto, who once believed he was not ready, now saw with clarity what he had overlooked. Love was not always about timing or achievement. Sometimes it was about recognizing what had been there all along. When Haruto heard that Nanami was also visiting the town, his heart raced in a way he had never experienced before. It was as if fate was offering him another chance, a chance to correct his silence and finally speak the truth. He remembered the way she used to look at him, the courage it must have taken for her to confess her feelings, and the patience with which she had accepted his rejection. He remembered Yuki too, and the friendship that had been tested by unspoken emotions. All of it weighed on him, but this time he knew what he wanted. For Nanami, returning to her hometown was also a journey of reflection. The familiar streets reminded her of simpler times, but they also carried echoes of unresolved feelings. She had long since learned to live independently, to carry her heart with grace, but deep down, the memories of Haruto remained, not with bitterness, but with quiet acceptance. She never expected their paths to cross again, yet life often surprises us when we least expect it. The stage was set for a reunion not dramatic or forced, but natural, as if time itself had been waiting for this moment. Years of distance had created space for growth, and growth had created space for understanding. And so, as Haruto prepared to see Nanami once more, his heart was filled with determination. This time, he would not stay silent. This time, he would choose courage over hesitation. When Haruto finally saw Nanami again, the moment felt both familiar and entirely new. The years apart had changed them, yet the essence of who they were remained the same. Nanami's smile still carried the warmth that had once brightened his days, and Haruto's presence still gave her a sense of stability she had always admired. They stood before each other, not as the uncertain teenagers of the past, but as adults who had learned from time, distance, and life itself. For Haruto, the words came more easily than he expected. He no longer carried the doubts of youth, nor the hesitation that had once kept him silent. Instead, he spoke with honesty. He told Nanami that he had come to realize the depth of her feelings and how much they had meant to him, even when he hadn't fully understood them. He told her that life without her laughter, her encouragement, and her unwavering kindness had left an emptiness he could no longer ignore. Nanami listened quietly. She was surprised, not because she hadn't dreamed of this moment, but because she had long ago set aside any expectations. She had learned to accept the way life unfolds, believing that sometimes love does not find its way back. Yet here Haruto was standing before her with sincerity in his voice and clarity in his eyes. Her response was simple, yet filled with meaning. She told him that her feelings had never been about receiving something in return. They had been about being true to herself. She explained that love, at its core, is an act of giving, not possession. And while rejection had hurt, she had never regretted being honest. It had helped her grow, and it had helped her understand what it meant to care for someone without conditions. Haruto's heart swelled at her words. In them, he saw not only the young girl who once admired him, but also the woman she had become, resilient, thoughtful, and strong. He realized that what he felt now was not just affection, but respect. And so, with all the courage he had once lacked, Haruto confessed his love. Nanami's eyes softened, and for the first time, she allowed herself to accept the possibility that love could return after all. She agreed, not out of nostalgia or longing for the past, but because she saw that Haruto's words were genuine, born of growth and maturity. In that instant, it felt as though the distance, the silence, and the years apart had all been leading to this moment of reconnection. Yet their story is not only about romance. It is about the lessons hidden within their journey, lessons we can all carry into our own lives. This story reminds us of patience, as not every feeling is returned at once. It shows the courage of honesty, which may bring discomfort but builds trust. It also highlights resilience, accepting rejection without bitterness and growing from it. These lessons extend beyond romance. In every friendship or bond, challenges arise, but through patience, honesty, and resilience, we discover opportunities to grow and strengthen our connections. The reunion between Haruto and Nanami is touching, but what makes it meaningful is not just the joy of love finally realized. It is the journey that led them there, the quiet reminders that even when paths diverge, the values of kindness and sincerity can keep doors open for the future. As they stood together, reunited after years of uncertainty, they both knew that the story of their friendship had not been lost. It had simply evolved. What began as the bond of 3 children had become the foundation for deeper lessons about what it means to care for one another. And in that transformation, there was beauty. Stories like the one of Nanami, Haruto, and Yuki are not simply about who ends up with whom. They are about the human heart, the way it grows, falters, and heals. They are about how we learn to understand ourselves and others, and how the experiences of love and friendship can shape the people we eventually become. As Nanami and Haruto embraced their second chance, they also carried with them the lessons of the past. Their happiness was not built on forgetting what had once been difficult, but on honoring it. The courage Nanami showed in confessing her feelings, the honesty Yuki displayed in revealing his own heart, and even the distance that grew between them. Love, in their case, was not simply about reunion. It was about transformation. For Yuki, the journey was different. Though he did not end up with the romantic story he once imagined, his role was far from small. In fact, his courage to be honest and his grace in accepting Nanami's choice reflected a strength that often goes unnoticed. Too often, we think of love as success only when it is returned. But Yuki's path shows us that unreturned feelings can still teach us about dignity, resilience, and the true meaning of care. His presence in the story is not a loss. It is a reminder that love in its purest form is not about possession, but about wishing happiness for the person we cherish. And for all of us, the story carries a broader message. Relationships, whether friendships, romances, or family bonds, are not defined only by easy moments. They are tested in times of discomfort, when choices are difficult and emotions are raw. What matters most is not perfection, but the willingness to be sincere, to respect boundaries, and to keep kindness at the heart of our actions. The truth is, many of us will face moments similar to Nanami's, Haruto's, or Yuki's. Perhaps we will find ourselves admiring someone silently, unsure of whether to speak. Perhaps we will be the ones to confess, not knowing if our feelings will be returned. Or perhaps we will be in Haruto's place, realizing later and expected the value of someone who has always been by our side. In each of these situations, the lesson remains the same. Honesty and respect give us the strength to move forward, no matter the outcome. Love and friendship often unfold in ways we cannot fully control. What we hope for may not happen when we want, yet that does not mean it will never arrive. As Haruto learned years later, life often surprises us when the time is right. This is not about waiting passively, but about growing, becoming self-aware, and preparing ourselves to embrace love when it comes. Nanami and Haruto's reunion was not about erasing the past, but appreciating it. Their struggles, honesty, and courage gave depth to the love they eventually shared, showing that even painful moments can hold meaning when we choose to learn from them. Love itself is one of life's greatest teachers, urging us to be brave, patient, and kind. Not every friendship becomes romance, yet every sincere connection shapes us. Whether speaking your truth, accepting with grace, or realizing love too late, each role carries value and growth. The story of Nanami, Haruto, and Yuki reminds us that love is not a race to be won or lost. It is a journey full of lessons that shape us into wiser, kinder, and more compassionate people. And in that way, every story of love, return or not, is a story worth cherishing.